The New Orleans Pelicans are still the top team in the West, surprising many, but should we have seen this coming? Antonio Daniels joins me to answer that question. Plus, we talk about Zion winning Player of the Week and more in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Let's go!
You are Locked On Pelicans, your daily New Orleans Pelicans podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome to another edition of Locked On Pelicans, the daily podcast covering your favorite team, the New Orleans Pelicans NBA, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, available wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. I'm your host, Pelicans Insider Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Here with y'all on this Tuesday, a game day for the Pelicans as they take on the Utah Jazz. And I got the one, the only Antonio Daniels joining me in just a second here to break down whether we should have seen this run from the Pelicans coming, Zion, and more. And of course, thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday for y'all, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube. Tell a friend about the show and comment down below on YouTube. And today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by PrizePicks. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's PrizePicks.com, promo code Locked On. Let's get right into it with Antonio Daniels. All right, Antonio Daniels joining me on the show. It's been a little bit since you've been on, AD. Before we get into anything else here, how much fun are you having right now? And were you expecting this first in the Western Conference at this point in the season?
No, I think the potential was there. But to add to, I remember saying in the summer how important it was to have when CJ came over last year and Larry Nance came over last year. They came in February. So it's really weird when you have to learn on the fly, through all that they never got an opportunity to play with Zion. Zion never had an opportunity to or Trey Murphy or, you can go down the list of different guys that Zion never had. It's almost like they needed that training camp together to develop the watching come to right now. But I'll tell you this, though, Jake. What David Griffin has done, created a culture of guys that are outplaying their expectation. NBA has become. When you look at Golden State and what they were able to accomplish, it was better than we thought he would be. Klay Thompson was better than we thought he would be. Draymond Green was a second-round pick. Jose Alvarado's doing, what Najee Marshall's doing, what Larry Nance is doing. Look at what certain guys are doing. Expectation is concerned, and you match that with star power, you got something pretty good on your hands.
Yeah, I think, it comes to something that a lot of people are saying right now, and they wonder if this Pelicans team is the deepest in the NBA. And I tend to agree with that when you look at it, right? Like you immediately are agreeing with me, but it's not necessarily because they have like starters across here, right? I don't know if Jose would start on a ton of teams, let's say. I think some guys would, some guys wouldn't, but they fill their roles so perfectly here in New Orleans, and they work around the core of this team in Zion, in CJ, and Brandon Ingram. And then you're seeing that kind of growth from them too, right? Look at Najee Marshall over this stretch of games, the way he's kind of being a complementary player, but also knowing when to take over. That's the kind of depth I look at that helps you win championships, because you need those type of guys.
I've been by Sirius XM show that the Bells have the deepest team in the league. You can argue with whoever you will, and I've issued this out to nationwide callers. Go ahead and call in and tell me we can debate this, because what they have is a legitimate 1 through 2nd unit guys that are rotation ready. Everybody can say that. You may have 2 or 3 guys 8 deep and be rotation ready, but when you realistically can go 11 or rotation ready when someone else is injured, listen, again, when you have Jose coming off your bench with Murphy, with Dyson Daniels, with Devontae Graham, with Larry Nance, with guys that understand their role, that have embraced their role, I don't debatable. You know what, Jake? Steph Curry's the best shooter of all time. That's not debatable in my opinion with somebody about that. And I'm done arguing with people about whether or not the Pels are the deepest team.
There you go. They are. It's as simple as that. I like it. I mean, no, look, the results speak for themselves. Zion and BI have only played 11 games together, right? And they're 7-5 during that 12 games. They're 7-5. That's incredible what they're doing right now. And as you mentioned, it speaks to what David Griffin has built here, kind of seeing his vision come to fruition. But I also think you've got to give, obviously, the coaching staff a ton of credit for developing these guys, having these guys ready to go. You know, you've seen some of them who have been starters in the past, and Devontae Graham now moved to a bench role. Larry's been a starter. He's come off the bench. It's various things. It really speaks to Willie Green and his ability to get these guys to buy into what they're doing, whether that's changing a role, whether that's taking on kind of different responsibilities. You don't see any complaints from any of these guys. No one seems really upset, right? You have Billy Hernangomez, who was the Eurobasket MVP. He's coming off the bench, and they're all willing to sacrifice kind of for the greater good of the team here. You don't always see that everywhere.
When I podcast numerous times, you can't excel in your role until you're willing to embrace it. Cliche statement in the NBA is, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I want to do whatever it takes to win a championship. But what's missing at the end of that sentence is, unless my minutes are cut, unless I'm not in the rotation. You know what I mean? Unless this is agent year. What you have on this team is guys that are not just talking the talk, but that are walking the show, can go 3 or 4 games without playing and then come in and play like he's playing now. Billy without playing and then come in and give you 10 points, 9 rebounds in 15 minutes on the night that he's guys that are really willing to play their role. It doesn't mean that Jose Alvarado's always that spark, because when CJ gets COVID, you know what? We need you to come in and start. You know, Dyson got some time. But then once he come in there, we need you to get in and we need you to defend. Come in and everybody wants to score. But you have guys that have gotten on the floor because their ability to play defense. About this coaching staff. It is an amazing coaching staff that does not. What happens is when the team plays well, we praise the players. But when the team starts to struggle, we criticize it. Oh, if it was me, what I would do, or I would know. Willie Green and his coaching staff and Fred Vinson and Casey Hill and Teresa Weatherspoon, Corey Brewer. This is an amazing coaching staff that they have. And what makes it great is they to each player. Keep them ready. Keep them confident, because throughout the course of 2-game season, it doesn't come down to if you're going to get in. This is the low management era. It's when you are going to get in that you're ready to rock and roll. And these are the coaching staff and their player development coaches.
Yeah, and it's why the Pelicans really haven't missed a beat with many of these guys out, right? Brandon Ingram hasn't been in for these 7 games here, and I want to get into him in a minute or two. You know, again, you have Herb Jones missing. You're down 2 starters. It's very easy to lose games if that's the case. And New Orleans is just rolling along, and they look really good. They're the only team in the league right now, top 5 in offense, top 5 in defense, and it's just a credit to everything. How much do you think the atmosphere in the locker room plays, like the good vibes we see on the bench, all of that kind of playing into this right now?
You know what's funny, Jake, about that until you win? Because this is something that I talked about last year when this team was 3-6, 1-12. No one wants to hear about it when you're losing. Like, man, these guys really get along. Camaraderie of guys that want to see one another succeed. And you know what the response is? Yeah, that's fantastic. Don't nobody want to hear it then. But then when you start to see it play itself out in real time, internally fighting for minutes and each other's biggest fan. You watch Jose Alvarado compete for minutes, but they are right there cheering for each other every single day and helping each other to see it. Again, it doesn't become an issue until you start winning. Then everybody camaraderie. This same camaraderie was there when this team was 3-16 last year. Special now. Because if you've ever gone through something with someone, Jake, it hits different when you've been there together. And where this team was last year where the national media was talking about Zion and New Orleans Pelicans fans. Let's base. CJ McCollum shouldn't want to go there. Nobody wants to play in New Orleans. I see why Anthony Davis all this together, and you turn it around together, it hits a little bit different.
Yeah, no, definitely. Look, and I'll get into this. Let me hit a break here really quickly, then we'll come back in and I'll build off that. Then let's look at Zion, Brandon Ingram, a couple other guys too, because we just got some news about Zion Williamson this week. They were celebrating a little bit on the team play in which you were part of. That's coming up here next in today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Before we get to that, though, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is daily fantasy made easy. I love this, and I know you will too. Do you want to take the over on Zion Williamson scoring 25.5 points in this one? Do you want to take the over on CJ making more than 2.5 threes? You can do that at PrizePicks. It's super simple. You pick 2 to 6 players, and if they go score more or less than their PrizePicks projection, you can win up to 25 times your money on any entry. And the best part is you're not competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections. You see the numbers, you pick more than that or less than that. It's really that simple. And entries can be even made in 60 seconds or less, and they have projections on any sport you watch. They have safe and fast withdrawals, and they're currently operational in over 30 states and Canada. So download the PrizePicks app today, or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. If you deposit $100, PrizePicks will give you $100. If you deposit $50, PrizePicks will give you $50. Don't forget to enter the promo code LOCKEDON and sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Now back to me talking with Antonio Daniels. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday for y'all, breaking down everything you want to know about the first place team in the Western Conference. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and on YouTube as well. If you want to support the show, comment down below on YouTube as well. So you were just talking about how they had this same kind of atmosphere and camaraderie last year. And you heard Willie Green early on in the season say, you know, some of the losses we're struggling with right now, these are going to turn into wins late in the season. And they did. And they made the postseason. And they gave the Suns a competitive first-round series. You're kind of seeing that play out this season, too, just much quicker. And I think it's just kind of a step up from all of that, right? They were 0-3 their first 3 overtime games. Then they come back and really take it to the Suns on Sunday in overtime. Do you see some similarities from last season to this year, just kind of improving upon it now?
Well, this league is about guys taking individual steps. Leads to collective success, right? So I Celtics. The Boston Celtics didn't become who they are until Marcus Smart took that proverbial step individually. Then that collectively trickled down there. You come back a better player than you were previously. Now you have a better basketball team, season growth, off-season improvement. Off-season confidence, off-season strength. That stuff is important. Ask you a question, Jake, and you tell me yes or no. Is Jose Alvarado the same player he was?
No, he's not. He's you can see the improvement from him. You absolutely can see it.
He's the same player he was last year.
You cut out there for a second. What was it?
It was last year.
Oh, no, cut out again. Okay. You're saying he's a better player than he was last year, or he's the same?
Who, Trey?
No. Sorry. So you just asked me about Trey. The audio cut out for a second there. I think Trey's improved, but I think he's fairly similar to who we saw because he came so important at the end of the season, I thought, for the team last year.
Yeah, what I'm saying, none of these guys to me are the same player they were.
Yeah.
Najee Marshall, it's not the same player. All these guys are more confident because they're more experienced through 2 playoff games, which is similar to playing games, which is similar to 2 playoff games, to 6 games without a generational talent. What that does collectively for it makes you come back more hungry, and it makes you come back a completely different basketball player. That's because guys put in the time, the work, the energy, and the effort in off season and back different this season.
No, and you've got to love seeing the team be so committed to that. Do you think that's part of going through that postseason and kind of getting a taste of it? That was the first playoff experience for a number of these guys, getting that atmosphere. Does that make a player hungrier going into that offseason to come back next year?
Saw the dunk that Zion did at the end of the game. He didn't even play in the series. In the locker room after that loss, right? Being at your brothers after they lost. Yes, it does something to you. When you lose, that you really not just push that team, but in your heart of hearts, you ask that team. Yeah, it makes you go in the offseason and work just a little bit.
But that's wonderful, right? That kind of speaks to why a lot of these teams, these young teams, shouldn't be tanking, if you will, in the NBA, right? And being so competitive is important. When people say like, oh, you'll get swept out of a first round series, you see the importance of making it and what it does to guys. But it also, we can get into this here, you know, it builds up the fan base too, right? You were at these two games this weekend, obviously calling them. It felt like a playoff game in there from the fans. New Orleans seems like they've been along for this ride too. They've grown as a fan base as well. And I'm sure you've seen that passion really coming out, particularly over these last two games.
That how the space has started with Chris Connor and the perspective at that particular time of Pelicans fan base, right? And I think about the way it is now. Everywhere, I don't care where it is. I go to church, I go to the gym. It doesn't matter where I go. I went for a couple days ago, and everybody is talking about the Pelicans, right?
Yep.
And this fan base deserves this.
I agree.
This fan base deserves this. After this community, about this fan base, about Zion, about all, man, happy here to be sitting here and calling these games, because I'm not calling these games. I mean, I'm calling this games for the New Orleans Pelicans fan base, because we last year when it was 1-12, and I remember being on the road doing, and the frustration in Pelicans fans' voices as they voiced their frustration. I kept telling them, just be patient. Just be patient. I am at every practice. I promise you this will play itself out. So to watch it play itself out right now and to see the passion from this New Orleans Pelicans fan base, man, it is so awesome.
No, it's wonderful. They've really embraced the team. It's all anyone can talk about right now, right? I was just at the Saints and Pelicans like media luncheon thing, and like only people wanted to talk about the Pelicans, right? Because that's one, they're doing a little bit better than the Saints right now. But this team's so exciting. They're young. It feels like this fan base is growing with them. They've invested emotionally in them, and they're getting that payoff, right? Like, look, you don't hang a banner for being first place in the West on December 12th, but it doesn't mean you should enjoy it or let people detract from that, right? You've been through the muck, Pelicans fans. You get to embrace this.
I'm going to tell you what my mom tells me all the time. Celebrate your small victories, because those small victories, you celebrate enough of those lead to a much bigger victory. Like, don't let nobody steal your joy. What I continue is...
Good advice.
Yeah, there are people around, talking heads and faces, that are constantly now going at the Pelicans fan base, trying to steal the joy that we, nope, you enjoy this. You enjoy this. You enjoy every minute right now having the it team in the NBA. Yep. Because remember what people were saying when this team was 3-16. Zion wasn't signing the extension. Oh, I want to see Zion go play elsewhere. There's a rapper called Simba in his song, and he says they love to talk down about, right? Now that everything is kind of turned around a little bit, sell it.
Look, you're seeing some of these other fan bases. One team in particular, they just played twice, that can't handle that the Pelicans are winning, and they are like crushed by it. And it's interesting to see the tables turn, and people aren't ready for this Pelican squad to be coming through. It really feels like
exactly what it feels like. And you know what? What nobody. I said this yesterday on our pregame show and on the Phoenix Suns pregame show. You know, it's for fun when the rabbit got the gun. It ain't fun that way. You know what I mean? But around, and when you're the one that's being talked about, and people can continue to throw, oh, they had about your franchise. Now people don't want you to punch back. People now you're sitting, and I'm not saying this in an arrogant manner. By no stretch of the imagination, there's no championships in December 12th. No banners are hung in December 12th. Left to be done. But listen, man, this fan base and this team nauseum in the wrong way. So it's nice to be on the other side of things for once, with celebrating that. And you said it, Jake. That's the thing about the tables. They'll turn on you.
And as you said, you could really start to see the seeds of this being planted and kind of come into fruition last year. And then you added generational talent in Zion Williamson back into the mix. And, you know, obviously I didn't have the Pelicans won in the West, you know, at any point for this coming season, but you start to see it. And it's like you said right in the beginning, right? It's not actually a huge shock when you start to really think about it and see everything coming together and the natural growth that we're seeing from some of these guys, particularly with such a strong coaching staff and then a front office that does a great job of finding complementary players and the right players, right? Dyson Daniels at 8 is an impactful player in this rotation already. You don't always get to see that, but when you've seen the track record of this front office doing it, right? They've had a lot of success with two-way guys in Kenrich Williams, Najee Marshall, Jose. The draft picks clearly in Trey and Dyson Daniels have worked out. You can kind of see that maybe this is always what they've been building towards. And now, absolutely enjoy the moment.
I remember a couple years ago where people were calling for Griff to be fired.
Look, I was one of those guys too. Like, let's not even pretend.
Here's my thing. When you are Griffin is in, to be successful at your job, you have to have a vision that other people can't relate to. Get involved in the whole, okay, Griff is brilliant. If you ever sit down and you I'm talking about he's brilliant in his thought process, his foresight. What he's thinking about is the present, right? And it's very, very easy to like, man, what are we doing? Like, it's amazing in the Western Conference. And I see people on Twitter talking about, you know how good you have to be to actually be in a row. Who realistically are you trading and getting and expect to make an impact on this roster? You know how good you have to be?
Yeah.
You league. You don't just bring somebody else in and that other person ain't coming in to pay 25 to 30 minutes. But again, in conversations that I've had with David Griffin, I've walked away from those conversations. You know what? I have not thought about that. His foresight, the way that he is guys like Herb Jones, drafting guys like Dyson Daniels, right? Drafting these kind of players. I remember telling Pels fans a year ago, you won't see Trey until he's out there with Zion Williamson, CJ McCollum, and Brandon Ingram. Because you don't draft him to go one-on-one, you draft him to space the floor. And right now, what you see in Trey Murphy that has the potential to put together multiple 50, 40, 90 seasons, right? What Griff has done is he has drafted guys whose skill set complement.
Yeah, no, look, it's part of kind of with the game, right? People don't always see the complete picture. They don't fully see your vision. So you get people like me who look very foolish for saying some of those things now, and rightfully so. And it's okay. I'll own up to that one there a little bit. But like, look, credit to him on sticking with his vision. There was a lot of adversity he faced. He's, look, no one's perfect. He's undid mistakes that he's done too, which is also a credit to him to realize that and not stubbornly stick by certain things and kind of keep moving forward till he got the right combination of things. But this is the guy who had the vision for this team and what to do with it. And you're seeing it really pay off now. So he deserves all the credit in the world for everything that we are seeing right now with him. Like, absolutely. There should be no question about David Griffin at this point going forward for hopefully a really, really, really long time. So coming up next, we got Zion Player of the Week in the NBA. We have Brandon Ingram hopefully returning soon. I want to talk about those two players coming up here next with Antonio Daniels on today's episode of Locked On Pelicans. Before we get to all of that, today's episode of Locked On Pelicans is brought to you by BetOnline.net. BetOnline.net is your number one source for betting info, stats, news, and analysis. So you can get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, whether you want pro to college football. It's bowl season after all. You got basketball, World Cup. They've got it all over at BetOnline.net. And it's the easiest way to get your betting info. If you want to get in on the Zion for MVP odds, since Antonio Daniels and I are about to talk about him, you can do it over PrizePicks before the odds get even worse. So head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about the trends in action happening right now over at betonline.net. BetOnline, where the game starts. Now back to Antonio Daniels. And thank you for making Locked On Pelicans your first listen today and every day. We're here Monday through Friday for y'all completely free, breaking down everything you want to know about this Pelicans team. It's a fun ride. They got two big games against Utah coming up this week. We'll talk more about those. Of course, it is a game day here when you're probably listening to this episode. So we got Antonio Daniels on talking about the growth of the team, the fan base, the job David Griffin is doing. Let's get into Zion a little bit. I can't believe we've made it this far without really talking about him, which speaks to all of the wonderful things going on around the team. He just won Player of the Week. The two games he put together against the Phoenix Suns, like, I know you agree with this. You talked about it on the broadcast. He's absolutely got to be in the MVP conversation.
Like, Luka's in the MVP conversation. Giannis Jokic is in the MVP conversation. Why can't Zion? Or why shouldn't Zion? I mean, Jason Tatum's in the MVP conversation. No, he is that good. And this, it's crazy to think about him right now. Played a little over 100 games. Can you imagine? Goes and he becomes accustomed to seeing different coverages and becomes more confident. I see him shoot 3 threes yesterday and to pull up 15-footer. Like, to see the game. They got one.
Look, you can see how special he is, right? Just everything he can do. Look, they throw 5 guys at him at times, and he still scores, right? There's that picture from the Toronto game where he's dunking basically over 5 guys. Yeah, it looks fake, right? Yeah, they're all horrified by what they're seeing. But he went through 5 guys, 10, arms around him trying to knock the ball loose, and no one can do it. You saw it against the Phoenix Suns, right? And you were talking about it on the broadcast. Monty was shifting all 5 defenders to the side of the court that Zion was. You could draw a line down the middle of the court, right? There'd be no defenders on one side of it. They were so worried about what Zion does. When you look at an MVP candidate, he's scoring, he's assisting, he's making his teammates better, and he's leading one of the top teams in the NBA. Like, what more do you need other than he's got the narrative too, right? Missing all of last season, coming back, so there's the story there. Like, he's got all the pieces for it.
I'm going to tell you, and I've seen it. What I needed to see, you just named all the right things. The narrative, he's scoring, he's making his teammates better. But what has really stood out to me is his willingness to defend. Stood out to me more than anything else. He's chased down blocks. I had a conversation with Teresa Weatherspoon telling me about different things that her and Zion had talked about defensively, right? Pay attention to in the beginning of the season. Now he's taking individual defensive challenges with his feet. You know what I mean? Because you told him at one point, you can't be this good. You can't have this good of footwork offensively and then not move your feet defensively. If you move, you know you can do it defensively. And what she has told him is you have to be your – that's why you see the chase down blocks. That's why you see him coming weak side that they have amongst themselves with T. Spoon. Are you your brother's keeper? If someone had there for them. So for me, all of the offensive things about Zion, we've seen that. But his willingness to defend, when your best player is willing to do those things for your entire team.
No, it speaks to why their defense is ranked third in the league right now, right? They remind me a lot of the Toronto Raptors, a lot of deflections, kind of like a buzzsaw on defense. And then you mentioned it, Zion on the weak side, just coming over to help, which he's doing much better, right? It seems like one of the things he just needed to do, both offensively and defensively, was just get up to game speed, right? To be able to kind of read the game in real time. The guy missed all of last season. He hadn't played a competitive game in something like 19, 20 months. It takes a little bit to get kind of back into the rhythm, into the flow. And now that he's doing it, you're seeing people say he looks like Duke Zion again, which is just an incredible thing. He's got I think he's just got a natural instinct for the ball too. He knows when to kind of grab it and rip it out from a guy. You saw it in his basically one of the first plays he ever had in Summer League when he threw Kevin Knox to the ground in Summer League and everyone kind of went wild. You see him kind of reaching all of that full potential. You and I last talked when we last did a show, it was the day that he signed the contract extension. So I think we get good news when you and I do this podcast together here with the player of the week thing right now. But man, like just the way he elevates his team on everything, right? When he's playing defense, the other guys know they have to step it up. They can't let Zion outshine him on that side, right?
Well, he's different now. A lot of what he went through last year mentally. That's the part that people don't take into consideration. And I talked about this at nauseam national platforms. So social media is the best worst. You have Eggman that's behind Twitter or Instagram, these guys that are 20, 21, 22 years old, and that I've actually had with Zion. There's been times where he's actually pulled me aside and hugged me. I just want to thank you so much for always having my back. Players listen. Players listen for all that he went through last year. All the emotions, the ups and downs, to sound like he is performing right now, basically to shut the mouths of people that had all about this young man. He deserves every bit of this and more.
No, I think so. And it's wonderful to see someone, it's unfortunate they have to fight through that adversity, but to see them kind of come out the other side of all of that on what was going to be a really tough year for him, what speaks to him and how he's grown, how he's able to kind of handle that. And he probably feels near invincible right now, that whatever anyone throws at him, he's going to be able to do and come out the other side. And you're really seeing it reflect in his play. We mentioned that he and Brandon Ingram have played 12 games so far together. Mm-hmm. Brandon Ingram seems like he's going to be back on the court soon. Zion's thrived right now. It seems to be a lot of the point Zion. You have any concerns at all about him and Brandon Ingram getting back kind of on the same page and keeping this train rolling for New Orleans?
No, because I think it would be an opportunity to sit and watch. There are two ways to learn in this league. You can learn through vision. And BI has already learned the experience part. Now he's had an opportunity. Same thing that we're seeing, BI seeing as well. But this gives Coach Willie, gosh, what a luxury. What a blessing.
It's a good problem to have. It's a great problem to have.
Yes, it is. The thing about stars in today's NBA is you can stagger them. I've had Willie after practice about how do you do that? You know what I mean? I have to find out who plays well with who. Right? So maybe Zion, CJ, and BI plays well with Jonas. Now this impacts the whole stuff coming out together and who's going back in together. But that is a great luxury to have. If you guys come out and now you're going back in with Brandon Ingram and Jonas Valanciunas, so those kind of guys, like the depth and the star power, along with this is the difference. You said it's similar to Toronto. Toronto can't play big though.
That's true.
Toronto doesn't have big. When you have a team in today's NBA, the versatility to play big, small, and win small, with having a small ball five like Larry Nance, that is such a luxury.
No, it makes them so much fun to watch too, right? You know, it was funny because early in the season, like that opening game against the Nets, right? They blitzed them right off the beginning and just battered that team. Zion subs out, they have to deal with BI and CJ out there, and then all of a sudden those guys sub out and they're like, oh, we finally get a break, and then you see Zion checking right back in. It's almost got to be demoralizing if you're an opponent, just kind of the mental sight of all of that happening. So you think there's a little bit of an adjustment period they're going to see once BI comes back, and they might go through let's call it a minor rough patch?
Of course. I think I would be lying. Everything would just be smooth because right now you're in the midst of a 7-game winning streak. I get it. And you won 7 games playing a particular way and a particular style. But when you have on the bench and you have your best defensive perimeter player sitting on the bench, of course there's going to be, but that's a good adjustment to have, though.
Oh yeah, look, you'd rather be in this position. Look, every coach would kill to be in this position, right? Like we're talking about this like it's like woe is us, or oh no, what are they going to do? It's going to be fine no matter what, right? Oh no, you have to, poor Pelicans, you have to reintegrate Brandon freaking Ingram back into this team, right? But I think it's good for the fans to probably have that expectation that like, okay, it might be a little weird for a game or two as they start to figure this out, but I think you've seen that they're good enough, and I talked about this on my show the other day. Look, they can win any kind of style of game, and if there's one thing that I've been impressed with this team so much this year, it's that, right? That game against Detroit, they would have lost at the beginning part of last season, or even like 2 seasons ago, right? And they found a way when things just weren't working for them to get it done. Same for the Suns game in overtime, right? To see them go 0 for 3 to start the year and then close that one out in the fashion they did. I mean, I don't know. I don't know if you have a word for that or if there's a quality you kind of ascribe to that, but that's something that's definitely jumped out to me for this team.
I always say that this team, to me, is a direct reflection of the city. They're resilient. They're very resilient. No matter what is going on, it may at some point, it may look like, oh my gosh, at some point, but they always together. And that is a direct reflection of this city. You think about all this city has gone through. Oh man, here we go again. But then the sun comes out the next morning, and then you have communities to build everything back up again. You know what I mean? And that's what the city of New Orleans is all about. That's one of the adjectives I love to describe this team. They're very resilient. Every game, they don't let go of the rope, no matter how dim it may look, and they don't.
No, look, I love it. That's where we're going to end the show because that was perfect right there. Resiliency. I think it's a great way to describe the team, and look at what they're doing now, overcoming all of these injuries. So, AD, I appreciate you so much taking the time to hop on here with me, my man.
For sure, Jake. Anytime you need me, brother.
All right, that's going to do it for this episode of Locked On Pelicans. Thank you all so much for listening. As always, I'm your host, Jake Madison, at NOLA Jake on Twitter. Enjoy the game tonight, and I'll be back with y'all to recap it tomorrow.